All right, nice evening out. Gonna get some rain in a couple hours, but right now it's pretty nice here. Anyways, gonna start my new video. Well, not a new video, continuation of previous videos on the Hodgepodge server I've been building. I loaded a bunch of stuff on it last video, so I'm gonna go ahead and be setting up, actually doing a server thing and setting up Samba to provide shares that you can log on to from pretty much any computer, including Windows. This is why we use Samba, because it supports the Windows SMB protocol. But yeah, I'm going to be setting that up. It's actually already set it up, but I had a few bumps and twists, so to say. So I'm going to be giving you the short version of what I did to actually get it working. It wasn't exactly obvious up front, but now that I've done it a few times, I've got a better understanding of how the process works. So we will get to it right now. Okay, I know I said we were going to create Samba shares, but I just realized there's a few intermediate steps we need to go through before we actually get to that point. Uh, well, one intermediate step, but there's another one I want to do anyways, just because I need to get it done. So, first thing we need to do, and this is sort of the maybe not, but I'm going to do it, is I need to check my two drives that were LVMs and see if there's any information I can get off of them. So they were recognized by Cockpit as an LVM set called Cloud Data. I can go to the drives and I can mount them someplace. I can see over here the two drives. It's already, I don't have to create a logical volume set because one already exists. I just need to mount it. And we'll mount it to MNT as temporary. Note the never mount at boot. That'll become important later. We'll talk about that a little more, but for right now, we're just mounting this. Now, if we look, we can see that it is mounted as MNT, and it's 2 terabytes, so both drives are there. Now, if we go to the navigation or navigator function, we should be able to look on the MNT drive and see what the contents actually are. Ah, yes, and there is something here. This is an old Nixcloud data folder. Oh, yes, I remember some of this stuff. Yes, I'll have to definitely look at some of this stuff and save what I need. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll get back to what we're going to do with this. Now I also want to deactivate the storage or the LVM. I want to deactivate it so I can use those drives. As long as it's activated and is recognized as a group, I won't be able to use them. So you can see I have no devices now under devices. So the drives, the LVMs have been deactivated, so I'll be able to use those. I've also unmounted the other drive, so the only drive I should have mounted right now is SDA3, which is my root folder. The same drive also has the EFI partition and the swap partition on it as SDA1 and SDA2. I really don't have to worry about those. I just made sure everything was unmounted. So now that everything's unmounted, we can go ahead and create our RAID device. We'll give it a name. It's going to be RAID 5. We'll leave the default chunk size, and then we will select our drives SDA, SD, B, C, D, and E. So RAID 5 is striped, so this should give us a 3 terabyte striped RAID with parity. Then we click on Create. Oh, we had to change the name. No spaces in the RAID name. Okay. Again, create. And it says 3 hours down under jobs. This is going to give us an error message until such time as the RAID is set up properly. It's actually more than one drive missing because it hasn't all been formatted yet. Oh, and our time's dropped to 2 hours. So we're not going to make you sit around for 2 hours. Actually, it took 1 hour and 49 minutes to get the RAID 5 set up for the 3 terabyte with 4 1 terabyte drives. That was a considerable amount of time. I didn't expect it to take so long, which is probably one of the downsides to using RAID. I mean, I seem to recall when I did a 2 terabyte LVM, it only took a couple of minutes, but or when I was working with Union file systems. So yeah, that can be a downside to RAID, is how long it takes to actually format everything. Our next task will be to get a file system set up on it, get it partitioned and a file system set up, and then we'll have to mount it someplace. First thing is we need to create the partition table. And yes, this is greater than 2 terabytes. We'll stick with that choice. It's going to be very slow if we overwrite all data. And partitioning is done. I should say, yeah, the partition table is done. We haven't made a partition yet. So now that we have a partition table, we need to go ahead and create a partition. And we give it a name, AXT4. We're going to use the full amount. We need to give it a mount point. So the first thing we want to do is, again, we want to copy everything in our home directory over to MNT. We want to use recursive, so we have R and get all the subdirectories, and P because we want to maintain the permissions. So we basically copy everything over to mount. Now if we list mount, we can see we copied our home folder, stuff in our home folder over. We need to move our actual home folder. So I'm moving it to home.original, ORIG, just in case it's a backup. And now we need to create an empty home folder to act as a mount point. So we make our home folder, make dir home. Then we're going to clear, go back to storage. We're going to unmount our RAID array. Now we're going to mount it to the new home folder. And remember, I talked about the never mount at boot. If you don't check this, it'll automatically write a line in our fs tabs file to auto mount, which saves us the trouble of actually doing it. As mounting the RAID array can be a little complicated when it comes to fs tabs. We list our home directory, and we say, yes, that's indeed there where it's supposed to be. And if we look at our etc/fs tab file, we can see that a line was indeed added to the end for our home folder, which is what mounts our RAID array. So it should remount at boot time. And upon rebooting, we can see that our RAID array is mounted as home, as expected. So at this point, everything seems to be okay. So since everything's working properly, we can now get rid of our backup home folder we created earlier. And again, we need to be root to do this. And we want to recursively delete everything. So let's do this as sudo. And we can see the file is gone. So we're good to go. We've created our RAID device. We've mounted it as our home directory. The next task I want to get into is actually adding Podman. What we're missing is Podman Compose. Podman we actually installed earlier. I'm not going to be using it in this build, but other people might want to use containers, so these will be a lot simpler. Well, supposedly if you use Podman Compose, I'm not an expert on pods, but or Docker or containers, but at some point I may have to look into this in the future. Like I say, I just want to show how to do this, so if you're going to use them, it's there. I'm probably not going to use it on this build, though. And finally, we are going to create our Samba or SMB share that we can use with Windows. So the first thing we need to do is set up our global parameters. Well, actually, if you go into this, it's going to tell you you need to modify your smb.config file. We'll talk about that in a little bit here. So basically, we give our a description for our server, a work group. I'm using work group because that's the default on Windows. Although you can call it anything you want. I'm setting the log level to 3. Again, that's up to you. Not using any Macs, and I don't really have any additional settings. So click Apply. Success. Now let's take a look at the configuration file that's actually created. We can see it here. We just got the general section. And if we look at etc samba, this is the original configuration file. A lot of this stuff doesn't port over, at least I have not been able to get it successfully port over. I need to play around with this a little more. This is the configuration file where I just have the include equals registry, which is the change it tells you to make. But for me, it worked better if I just created this new configuration file and moved the old configuration file to backup for safety and just in case. Now we can create a share. So we give a share name. A share description. And we need to add a path. This is one of the reasons I don't think some of the other stuff in the original config file will work, because we do need to specify a path here. Add user, add group, and then we want to browsable yes, but read only no. And now if we export our updated config file that's been created here, you can see we've got the user added, the user share added here. Now we go to our file browser. And we want to map our network drive. Here we want to use the double / and our IP address. Then hit browse. We can expand it, and there's our share. So let's try and connect. I didn't mention it, but you can use identities here to give the user on your server a Samba password. Because if this doesn't work, then the odds are if you're using a known user on your server, then they don't have a Samba password created. And here's the test file we just created in our home folder. So we now have Windows connectivity to our servers and our user home folder, which is a good thing because now we can get stuff on and off the server. Now I want to add I guess we call this a public share. Yeah, public share. Technically, anybody who has access to the network should be able to access this share. I've already created a folder in my home directory for this. It's at home samba. So I created that earlier. Now we're going to remove any users, and we're going to remove any groups. And we want to set guests to OK. Then we can go ahead and confirm. And let's take a look at our, double check it, yes. Let's take a look at our the config file that the program's maintaining, and yes, valid users equals no one, but guest is okay. So let's try this one out. We'll go ahead and map another network drive. Same procedure basically. Oh, now we have the Samba share. So we log in, see if we can write to the folder. Apparently we can, so that's all good too. I think we've got it. Well, I did manage to finish my video before I took off this morning. I've been out and around a bit, so once I get back home, I'm going to publish this one. As I said earlier, it goes all the way through setting up a Samba share and getting an SMB connection to Windows. So now our server is actually functioning like a file server should. I think there's going to be one more video coming after this one, and I'm going to install a media server. Probably Plex. Plex has some issues, but then again, what media server doesn't? I've played with Kodi more than I played with Plex, but that's coming next time around. So see you then.